Check, check, check. All right. Are we live? I think we are.
I think we are.
All right. So we're going to get going today. Adjust my camera so we can see red over here.
Hey guys.
All right. So this is Animated Adonai with Philip Moonpie Man Fulmer and my friend
Red. That's
Red.
pretty simple name there.
Always simple.
Yep.
Today we're going to be hitting up one of the most famous anime shows out there, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Very excited to get in this. It's
Oh
going to be
yeah,
a lot of fun.
that's near and dear to my heart. That was one of the shows. I think the original. If we talk about there's original one, and then this one's the second made version of it.
Yeah, the
And,
remake.
And so when I watched the remake of it, with I think it was, when did it come out? Like 2000 and
2009, 2010. The original came out in
I know,
2003.
yeah, but I remember when it came out later, I was like, I was so like, it was amazing because I was like, with those type of, anime, when it started getting in 2010, anime started getting really detailed and more lifelike compared to like early 2000s. So just to make the series really interesting, to just see that in that really neat animation.
Yeah, it really came to life. So again, with Animated Adonai, this is kind of a new show, but what we do is we review and analyze a new anime each week. Kind of go over the plot, the characters, and then we want to hit up the themes. What are the messages
And
that
how
this show
applies to our
presents?
life.
And then, like Red said, we go as a Christian, take it from a biblical perspective and see what are these themes talking about? Are they true? Do they line up with the Christian worldview? And if so, how can we live it out and learn from them? So we're gonna start today off with our weather report. Let y'all know what's happening around Conway. Right now it's 43 degrees. We've got a high of 45 and a low of 21, so it's gonna get really cold today. We're going to continue in the 40s tomorrow, and then Saturday, things are going to heat back up. We're going to hit 60 degrees on Sunday, so it will warm up a bit as we get kind of some rain coming in early next week. So be on the lookout for that. And then Red's going to give us our verse of the day.
Yep, it's going to be John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. And this is one of the most iconic pieces of sections of scripture, John 3:16, and it shows what is basically the gospel. What is God has done for us, bringing his son, and how we can have eternal life through him. So.
Yep. Probably the most famous verse in the Bible.
The most iconic.
Yeah. But we're going to get started here. A bit background information of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood before we get a song in to start us off. It was originally a manga, as most of the animes are. It was made, Fullmetal Alchemist was the original show that came out in 2003.
But the book was written in the 90s, and then I think 2000, that was when they made the animation for the 2003. And the 2003 wasn't that accurate to the manga because the manga wasn't finished with their series. So 2003 tried to throw their own spin on it to finish it, and it wasn't that accurate. So they later on made Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is the accurate portrayal of the books.
Right, and so that's the one we're going to be reviewing because it's the most accurate, and it's the one that I've watched. Red's watched both.
Yeah.
But the general idea of the show is about two brothers, Ed and Al Elric, Edward and Alphonse.
Alphonse, yep.
As they work together to try to restore their bodies after a terribly failed experiment and attempt to bring their deceased mother back from the dead using alchemy. The whole show revolves around the use of alchemy as a weapon, as a tool, making something out of something else.
And it's kind of taken place in this dystopia kind of sense where they're living this what was the name of the country that they live in? It's kind of like a circle in the middle of all these other countries, and they're kind of like in the middle of fighting. So when they become the state alchemists. They're basically helping the military efforts.
Yes.
And so
they're trying. They're with the military, but they're searching for the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah.
And this is a magical seeming stone
that they think that can solve all their problems with it because it's known to be so powerful.
Right. This stone that is so powerful and allows you to surpass the laws of alchemy. Because Ed and Al, Ed lost an arm and a leg in the experiment. It was stripped from him.
And then Alphonse, his little brother, was the alchemy. It's called the alchemy circle when they try to
transmutation circle.
And they studied the forbidden thing that was a no-no, attempting to bring life back, and that was when they try to bring back their mother. And when that happened, Alphonse, the younger brother, Edward, he lost his arm and leg. He lost his arm. I think he lost his leg, and then he Alphonse lost his whole body.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was gone. So he basically, Edward, in desperation, grabbed a suit of armor and with the blood of his, and put a seal and basically sealed his brother's soul into this armor. So now it's, Edward has this prosthetic arm and leg, and Alphonse is a living suit armor.
So if it sounds complicated, that's because it is.
It is.
This
very
is.
Complicated.
There's a very detailed plot in this.
We will not touch every subject in this anime. We're just gonna skim through it in the main parts of it.
So if y'all are confused, don't worry. We're not gonna. The focus of the show isn't going to be the plot as much. But Ed and Al, they tried to do some illegal alchemy, and now it cost them an arm and a leg, literally, and Alphonse's body.
Whole body. Yeah.
So they're trying to figure out if they can get this Philosopher's Stone, they can get their bodies back. Maybe they can get their mother back as well. So it's this whole adventure across the land, across different countries, meeting different friends and foes as they try to make the ultimate alchemy and the ultimate transmutation circle to save each other. So that's a basic synopsis. We're going to hit up a song, one of the first openings of the show, and then when we get back, we'll dive a little bit deeper into the plot and then try to talk about the characters before moving on. So let's go, and we'll see how we go. This is Again by Yui.
してしまうにはまだ人生長いでしょう。やり残してることをやり直してみたいから、もう一度行こうかな。ために生きてるんだって叫びたくなるよ。聞こえていますか。無難になんてやってられないから、帰る場所もないの。優しさにはいつも感謝してる。だから強くなりたい。懐かしくなる。こんな痛みも関係じゃん。
My savings are gone.
Okay, where were they last?
Here, right before I spent them on that vacation to Aruba.
Weird. Not weird. Not saving now means no money later. For free ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
All right, and we're back. So, Anime and Adonai talking about the great, deep show of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yep. And when we started trying to mention what kind of possible shows we could talk about, this one was like one of the major ones. But I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna get lost. There's a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff to pack.
The overall show isn't very long. It's a good size. It's around 64 episodes.
It's just a lot happens in that.
Yeah, so if you watch 2 episodes a day for a month, you'd finish the series.
Yeah, it's
kind of split up into 5 different parts or seasons, but it really all runs together pretty smoothly.
Yeah.
And a big reason for that is that this show has one central driving plot and story. Yeah, so there's not multiple arcs or anything like that. There's one plot, one story that goes from start to finish, and it slowly unravels itself over the entirety of the series.
It's not like some series where it just quickly like bam, bam, bam. But it's like it slowly, like we'll go ahead and get into the beginning of the storyline where Ed and Al are trying to find, they're made state alchemists.
Right, so they're working for the government.
Yeah, and they're basically they're sort of technically part of the military, but at the moment they weren't really. They just are sanctioned. They're not allowed to do alchemy outside of the government. So to be a state alchemist, they kind of have a chance to. And their dream is to find the Philosopher's Stone. So that's why they joined in the first place.
Yeah, and a big thing when we're talking about state alchemists or alchemy working for the military, it's kind of odd sounding, but these aren't people that are out and they're just in their little laboratory working away with chemicals. I mean, they've refined alchemy to a point where you can make circles, and then out of the ground you can form spears, weapons. Certain alchemists use fire, so they can use air, different elements around them to create fire.
Armstrong uses...
Yeah, there's a Major Armstrong who can create very detailed shapes and kind of daggers or whatever he wants, really, with alchemy. So when they're using alchemy, it's out on the field. They're using things around them. They're taking those elements.
It's more for a military type of...
Right, and they're reusing them for their own purposes. So what got me into this story, I watched it with a friend, and as I was watching it, the plot, like I said, it starts out kind of slow. It's a build. I'm like, you guys might be, I was really confused. I'm like, all right, we've got alchemy, we've got this government, we've got Philosopher's Stones.
It's many concepts at once, and then at the when it start the storyline starts going, it like with a lot of anime. Like there's a lot of concepts at once, and then usually it doesn't pan out. But this one, slowly but surely it starts making sense, and then all
Hmm.
these actually work together, and it actually becomes a really good story.
Yeah, and that's what got me hooked. The
Yeah.
first and second parts, so the first 24, 25 episodes, is kind of just having to introduce this wide range of ideas and characters and world building. But excuse me, when you hit season or part 3 and you're really starting to get comfortable with these characters, they really grow on you as we get to see their motivations, their ideas, the government secrets that they're hiding from our main characters, Ed and Al, as they're revealed. And it eventually draws you in so much that I was completely hooked for the last half of the show,
Hmm.
and I could not put it down hardly.
Yeah, I had to finish it to be like, those, it was that type of show where you had to finish it. It was that
Mhm.
good. So we kind of, start with, the themes. The beginning is, the iconic part of the beginning is where they go after this priest that was, he said that he had a philosopher's stone, and this is their goal, is to find this philosopher's stone to fix the problems that they started. Because obviously Ed has his arm and leg missing, and
Right.
Alphonse is stuck in this armor. Um, so they're trying to find this philosopher's stone to fix themselves, and later on they figure out that that person really doesn't have it, and it keeps on going on and on. So originally they're searching for the philosopher's stone until the midway point when they figure out that.
Yeah, there's this big reveal as Edward and Alphonse they're working with this character called there's Major Armstrong in
Mhm.
the military, who's another famous alchemist, and Colonel Mustang. And Mustang has his own agenda and plans. He's trying to work his way up through the ranks of the military to reach the top, where the leader of the land of Amistris is King Bradley, the Fuhrer. If that gives any idea of how the military
Yeah.
rolls, it's very much a
It's just
dictatorship almost.
basically it's just like
Military
the highest
controlled.
person is the highest that was in the military, basically.
Yeah, so Mustang wants to work his way through and reach the top, but as Ed and Al, who are fellow alchemists with Mustang, they're working together. Um, Mustang is going to try to help them a bit to find this Philosopher's Stone, and what they realize as they've been searching and studying is that the Philosopher's Stones, this source of power, the only way that these stones come into being is at a great, great cost.
Hmm. And it takes in the philosopher's stone, they said that like it almost took 1 million people to, like, they literally killed 1 million, like a whole city, just to make a philosopher's stone.
Right, and
Um,
so the Philosopher's Stones, they're made from human souls.
yeah, that was the concept of the philosopher's stone. So when they find this out, it's kind of like a facepalm moment where they're like, what do we do now? Because this was our, now they realize they don't want to have anything to do with that, because that was a cost to people.
Hmm.
And in order to make that, they would have to sacrifice all these people. So they decide to find another way to, find themselves back where they, before they were in this state of distraught.
Right, and so that would be fine. It was still going to be hard for them, but they're willing to figure out another way. But the problem is that the military is
Yes.
revealed to be
Corrupt.
gathering and creating these Philosopher's Stones
Yes.
in an attempt to do something extremely sinister and evil.
And so so now it's not just finding a philosopher. Now they realize there's more to play, and there's even more. So now it's searching for the philosopher's stone, turning to now they're, basically the government against them.
Right, trying to
And
figure out what is the government up to, what
all
does
these
these Philosopher's Stones
conspiracies
mean.
and all these.
Yeah, and so there's that at play. You've got Mustang, who's also realizing the government is up to no good, and he sees that as an opportunity to maybe begin the ideas of overthrowing this corrupt government in the name of justice.
And Edward and Al, kind of join with them, and they later on form a group that is against the corruption of the government.
Right. And that's not even to mention the main quote unquote villains.
Oh yeah,
of
it's
the
like
story.
as Al and Ed and Al start trying to find these clues about the government and stuff like that, time and time again. Like when they went to this, I think it was one building, they burnt it. I think it was they're named by sin. Like the enemies are called the sins, and there's like the father, the main guy, and then there's all these kind of his children in a sense, and they're like lust, gluttony, sloth. But the main people that he really comes across is like greed, lust, sloth. Not sloth. Sloth's the one that they come across later, but
Yeah, there's these 7 deadly sins, quote unquote, but what they are homunculi,
yeah.
as they're described, which are basically super soldiers created from Philosopher's Stones.
And so basically they have the power of the Philosopher's Stone that Ed and Al were trying to search for. So they're these basic living creatures with these stones in them.
Which gives them unimaginable alchemy
Yeah.
ability, special
And
abilities.
so every time Al and Ed try to, basically find more stuff out about the government, they are trying to stop them.
Right. And so you've got lust, wrath, greed, sloth, pride,
Gluttony,
gluttony,
and then the
and
father.
envy.
Envy and the father. And the father is the one that's in charge of all of them.
Right. He's in charge of the
And
homunculi.
he's like underground, and technically he's in charge of the government in reality, but he's underground where no one can see him.
Right. And so as these 7 sins are fighting against Ed and Al and Mustang and Armstrong and many of the other friends, it becomes an even deeper mystery of Ed and Al trying to figure out, all right, what is the connection with these Philosopher's Stones and the government and these super soldiers who are always trying to attack us or stop us from learning more, and it's trying to piece together this puzzle that comes out to be a really awesome conclusion by the end of it.
And the interesting thing is a lot of the enemies that are like kind of like the antagonist of the series. Some of them actually join in on the on the good side in a sense.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Not everyone is cut and dried as a villain or a hero. Some of the heroes have dark pasts.
Yes.
Some of the villains aren't quite as evil or unjustified in their actions as you might think. So there's very well-rounded characters, and that's a great part of the show.
And my favorite character that kind of came around was the one of the sins in there called greed, and I think it was one guy that came from a different country to try to find a Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, there's Ling, who's from, you said, another country. He's also looking for the Philosopher's Stones.
And so when that happened, greed was basically, I don't know what he did, but I think he did stuff for himself and didn't follow plan with the father. So the father turned him into a stone and found Ling and basically put the stone into Ling, and greed had nothing to do with the father now. So now greed, in control of Ling, joins in on Ed and Al and Mustang and all them against the government.
Yeah. So, like we said, it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
But what is great about the show is that as much as we might botch the job of describing it, the show does an amazing job of making everything explained and
it's like
clear.
All these concepts that do not seem clear in your head right now. If you ever watch it, it's a masterpiece of how it just explains and just how it can take all these concepts and kind of make them make sense.
Right. And that's one of the things, talking about plots just of any anime show that we like to review and analyze about its cohesion and structure. Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood has the best structured plot I've ever seen.
Yes.
Everything ties together. There's no apparent flaws that I can see. Characters act like you would expect them to. They act in character very well. And the intentions of people and the twists and the turns are revealed slowly throughout the entire show. So there's surprises from episode 3, episode 4, all the way till episode 63 when you're nearly at the very end.
Even at the end, you're always on edge. You don't know what's going on until they, let you in the loop.
But you never feel totally lost.
Yeah, you don't feel lost
or anything. And so that's one of the highlights of the show. The story power, as I like to call it, how much a story impacts me. This show isn't necessarily as inspirational as other shows. Like we talked about Sword Art Online last week. So for me, I don't know about you, Red, but the story wasn't like inspired me to go out and do something as much as like a Fairy Tail, that anime or others. Yeah. But it's so engrossing and the characters are so believable and diverse that the story itself does bring a great amount of power and pull and draw to it, I think.
And there's a lot of, that's kind of the thing is like a lot of really good stories that, a lot of concepts like, was kind of like not really, I think the one of the better movies, like, how there's Marvel and all these things that come out and it's like, man, this is great, all these superheroes. But once the Avengers started coming out and later on it started improving, then they started throwing in humor and they threw in relatable stuff. So now these superheroes are, now in a way they have similar struggles with us. So now we can relate to them. And it's kind of the same way in this story is these characters are not just people with just these alchemy powers. They're, there's these, they have struggles just like we do. And it kind of, we're kind of on the similar level when we're watching it.
Yeah, definitely. So before we take a break and we'll listen to a couple more songs, I want to, before we do that and hit the themes, let's talk a little bit about the characters. Because like we've said already, the characters are part of what makes Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood so good.
Yes.
So yeah, any thoughts on our main cast? So Edward, Alphonse, Mustang, any of those or others we haven't mentioned?
Armstrong, and then later on, which is she becomes very important, is Armstrong's sister.
Yes, Briggs Armstrong.
And so, do you want to?
Yeah, but I just want to know your thoughts. Like, what are there any characters that stand out to you based on their descriptions or abilities or motivations?
Okay, so I think out of all of them, it'd probably be Mustang. Like Mustang, other than Ed and Ed and Al and what they're trying to do. Mustang, you're kind of interested because he's this man that obviously wanted to, he wanted to work hard and later become the leader. And kind of like some, like how some people aspire to be president. He kind of wanted to aspire to be the leader of this country and take care of it. But now he sees all this corruption and things that are happening. So it kind of shows his morals and how he wants to make the country right. And he's willing to go through everything and even take a coup to take over the government to end the corruption. So
yeah,
it's kind of neat. Seeing him do that.
Yeah, Mustang is probably my favorite character of the whole show. But what I love about his character is that he's driven by this passion to become the new king, the new Fuhrer, but he realizes that he can't do it alone. He's always is known to be a chess player. He's the king, but he realizes that he needs his queen, his bishops, his rooks, his pawns. And so he gathers around him a close group of other soldiers and military personnel.
And that's so neat that kind of shows the importance of, because it's like the complete opposite is the leader now only relies on himself, and is that technically a spoiler? Calling him
I don't.
this 'cause he's technically the sin of wrath, and so he's technically since the father is kind of technically in control of the government,
So this King Bradley.
is technically the sin of wrath, and he listens to whatever the father says and goes. So he's basically a chest himself, and it's kind of interesting to see how Mustang is actually becoming a true leader in a sense where he's relying on people instead of just
his own strength, because Bradley Wrath, whatever you want to call him, since he's a homunculi, he's got superpowers. He's a super soldier.
So he doesn't rely on anyone. He mostly tries to solve the problems himself.
Yeah, he is willing to manipulate people.
Yes.
And rule with an iron fist, but he has no regard or care for human life. He doesn't care. He looks down on humans. But Mustang realizes the value of other people, weak as though they might be, and he uses that to work with them to bring about this great attempt and this great push to reform the country.
The nation.
Yeah. So Mustang's great. Ed and Al are two great characters because they've got a lot of devotion for each other as brothers. Now, they'll argue throughout the show, but you can tell that they love each other, and they're doing all of this with the goal in mind, in the back of their heads, to fix their bodies. Ed feels bad that Alphonse has just a metal suit,
and to be honest, Ed really said he didn't really care about his armor leg. He wants actually Alphonse back. He don't really, I was fidgeting with the mic, but he don't really, he really wants just, Alphonse back, because Alphonse is literally just a clinking heap of armor, like a soul in the armor. So he's just walking around, and he can't feel anything. He can't, he can't enjoy anything in life. He's just walking around in this suit of armor.
Yeah. So I like both the characters, but what do you think about the side characters? Not necessarily in particular, but another thing. Again, this is a great show, but Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood does so well is that there's so many different characters.
Oh, and they,
but they're all incorporated so well.
That's what like makes me makes me really, how like when you get used to something and then you're like, oh, it's not like that. It took me a while to start watching other shows because they took all these really good side characters, and somehow each one had some role, or in some episode they highlighted them in some way. And like Scar, and I think the younger girl that was Ling's sister, May.
Not sister, but other person.
She wasn't a sister?
No.
Thought she was part of the government.
She's from the same country, different tribe.
Different. Oh, that's why they were both okay. Yeah, I remember. Sorry, I'm like, it's been a little bit since I watched it, but yeah, Ling and Mei, they were both from the same country, but they're in but like different. I think it was different tribes are kind of like fighting for power.
Right, and so they're both going after the.
Yeah, so Mei is trying to get it for her tribe, and Ling is trying to get it for his.
Yeah, so all the side characters are great. They have their own motivations. They have their own push, and the antagonists, the enemies, are really great. You've got the 7 deadly sins. They are all kind of different. They all reflect their own aspect of wrath and anger.
All their specific
pride.
Sins. What you think of a sin? That's what they kind of act like in a sense.
Yeah. So every single one of these characters is amazing. But we're gonna stop here real quick. We're gonna play another song for y'all. And when we get back, we're gonna try to delve into, for the rest of the show, all of the themes and
the applications
ideas
to our life with our Christian values.
Yeah, because there are a lot, and there's no way we're gonna get through all of them. But we're gonna see how far we get. But for right now, let's get another song on. So we'll be right back.
く前に持ってる二人で月の星屑を強く光る永遠を探そう足りないことだらけだよね足りなくていいんだねだから君と出会えたんだ、oh、確かが何なのかそれが知りたくて小さなナイフを靴下に隠してた強がってついた嘘の方がずっと痛かった本当は怖いよだけど生きてく笑顔の君を風が撫でてく小さな手で差して二人で作ろう星屑を強く光る永遠を探そう正しいことが間違ってたらどうすればいい悲しいことが正しかったら受け入れるだけなくしたと思ってたでも君が知ってた君がいて本当によかった涙も痛みも星に変えよう明日を照らす明かりを灯そう小さな手が差して二人で作ろう星屑を強く光る永遠をさよならいつかは来るかもしれない季節はそれでも巡り巡ってく気づく前に持って歩いてく君と歩いてくそれだけは変わらないでよね
In 95, I helped tow your trailer. And in 09, it was sparks from me, your chains, dragging behind your truck that accidentally started a wildfire.
Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com, brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
All right, and we're back to Anime and Adonai, talking about Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood here. So we've discussed the plot as best we could. We talked about the characters.
We missed just to be honest, we missed like a lot of stuff.
There's a lot we couldn't even begin to talk about.
But you know, with the limited time we have, we want to start going into how the themes and things like that, and how we can take that out of, because everything has a story, and how can that relate to our story with our walk with God. So
yeah. So the first thing we're going to touch on is the main catchphrase, if you would, of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
It's kind of the concept of, like, if you ever looked up alchemy or anything like that, they always mention equivalent exchange.
Right, the law of equivalent exchange. Whatever you make, it has to come at an equal cost of something else. And that's what alchemy was all about. I mean, even outside of this anime show, is you're taking certain elements and you are mixing them together, you're making them to create...
And you're trying to make them something
else.
But it took something to make it.
Right. And so the show begins, like we talked about, with Ed and Al. They're trying to make this transmutation circle. They're trying to use alchemy with specific ingredients, specific things to bring their mother back to life and to basically create human life.
And they quickly realize, even in the first few episodes, if you ever watched just the first few episodes, they, it was so interesting to listen to how Edward, talks about how they tried to bring their mom back, and they always talk about and he started trying to describe these things, and there are chemical things of the that were all the chemical things that were listed of the human body,
Mhm.
and they tried to, it was like
Tried to recreate.
they try to
that.
recreate all these elements to bring back their mom, but then they realize those things are just things, and they can't bring back precious life.
Yeah, you can't bring back a person, a
Yeah.
soul. And so throughout the show, it's kind of put in tension of can we bring Ed's arm back? Can we get Al's body back?
Mm-hmm.
This law of equivalent exchange, what is the cost of what they're getting? Because Mustang, he's trying to become Fuhrer, and it costs him something in return.
Mm-hmm.
Ed, at the end of the show, he's
Yeah.
trying to save someone's life, and it costs him something in return, something greatly valued to him to
Mhm.
do it. So it's this idea of whatever you gain, you have to lose something. And so that's throughout the whole show. And so when we're thinking about this as a Christian, one of the first things I thought of was talking about salvation.
Yes.
The
And-
idea that, a lot of people say, God is love. If you sinned, He'll forgive you. That's
And,
fine. You'll get into heaven.
And that's one aspect of, because the funny thing is just like us, is if someone's trying to describe me or Philip, we're not just one thing. We when you try to describe one, you're not going to describe someone with one word, right? You're going to describe them with many words. They have many hobbies. They do many things. Same thing with God. God is many, many things, and you can't just say just one thing. Like, God is love, but he's also, there's a part of him called wrath. And because God is perfect and God is holy, we deserve we do not deserve any, well, we do deserve.
Right.
What am I?
We
but
do deserve.
No,
wrath.
but it's like, what am I thinking? But we do deserve everything that's coming to us. But since God sees and He just loves us, shows that love, and it kind of correlates. He was willing to come in flesh and die for us to bring us back in that relationship that He originally had. Before the Garden of Eden.
Yeah. So understanding, realizing all man, we are all sinful.
Yeah.
We've rebelled against God, and the price of that, the wages of sin, is death.
And then from that Romans 6:23, it says, "For the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life through Christ Jesus." And that's what God, in order to have salvation, in order to have forgiveness of our sins, and sins is anything that's fallen short of the glory of God, and it's an archery term. It's not just a churchy term. Sin means miss the mark, and we all miss the mark. We all miss the mark of God's standards, and so and even Christ says, pick up your cross and follow me. And in order to actually accept that salvation, accept what God has done for us, we have to die to ourselves and die to our desires to allow God to come in our life.
Yeah, we're told to put off the old self, put on the new self.
Yeah.
And there's that idea of equivalent exchange, so to speak, that if you gain something, you have to lose something.
Yes.
We can't serve two masters. You cannot serve God and money.
Mhm.
And so in our Christian life now, we have to exchange our old selves for our new selves.
Mhm.
And thinking of salvation, we aren't just let off the hook by God. There was a price, an exchange that had to be made on our behalf, and that was Jesus sacrificing himself and giving up his own life
Mhm.
to bear God's wrath in our place. So a great thing to meditate on and realize the price of our salvation was great.
And
It wasn't...
And it shows that he didn't he was not required to give us anything. So that's a really good meditation on just showing that how good our Father is to do all that for us. Because in reality, just denying what our sinful self is nothing in comparison of what he's done on the cross.
Yeah. So another thing, and we talked about this when we mentioned the Philosopher's Stones, when it was
Yes.
revealed that they are made from human souls, we see Ed and Al refuse to use them.
Yes.
And that brings up the idea of the value of human life and its price. And we mentioned this with Sword Art Online last week, if y'all were listening in.
And that was kind of similar in a sense as they, Kirito from, that other anime, Sword Art Online, they, after he, realized that these were lives that he was going to take, he only killed like maybe 3 times in the actual anime, and he every time that he did, he took notice of that person, and obviously he said, I had to take that life, but in order to do so, he valued that person, even though that person may have done wrong. And it's kind of the similar in a way as they had to, the Philosopher's Stone, they see the corruption in that, and they see millions of people were sacrificed and killed just to make this powerful stone. So that shows that they were willing to, then they realize their morals of, hey, we don't need to do that. There's another way. And it shows the value of life and, the concept of there.
Yeah. So that's popular in a lot of anime shows, but Fullmetal Alchemist really brings it home. Another interesting thing that I really like, we mentioned greed. He's one of the 7 deadly sins.
Mhm.
He's a super soldier, basically. But greed is a character who doesn't really serve the father, the main villain. He also doesn't really work and follow Ed and Al. He's kind of his own Lone Ranger.
Well, he
guy.
technically like helps here and there,
Mm-hmm.
but he's basically the example of greed. He does his own thing,
Right.
and so
one thing Greed says that kind of separates him from both sides, because everyone's wanting to see, are you being a good guy? Are you a bad guy? What's right? What's wrong? And so Greed says to represent who he is, his mentality. He says that he's talking about what greed is, how greed represents itself in other people. So he says, I long to see someone who died, for instance. That's what Ed and Al have. They have that desire to see their mother again. Or I want to be rich. Or I want women. Or I want to protect the world. There are these different desires that different characters throughout the show have. And so he says that they're all desires, or in other words, wishes. And so if you ask me, according to Greed, there's neither right nor wrong when it comes to greed. So what he means by that is that for his character, one of the 7 deadly sins of greed is that desire, that wish for something isn't good or bad in and of itself. It's how you direct it or how you use it.
yeah, and it's the same way with anything in our life. Is there's like how he was talking about is the value. They wanted their mom back. They wanted he like for example Mustang wanted to rule the country righteously in a way of like I don't want it to corrupt anymore. Those are nice things, but when you're making it your, like how this relates to us is if you're going to make, those, good things like our family, for example. Family is great, but if you're focusing solely on your family and nothing but your family or nothing but your job or school, and God is not even the forefront at all, then
you're corrupting that desire and causing it to become an evil
and you're
thing.
making it an idol, and an idol is anything above God. And I remember one of the church like older writers like way back then in the older parts of the like I think in the Reformation, he says our hearts are like an idol factory, and every single day we kind of have that that greed in a sense, as we desire these things that may be okay, but then we just take them and run with them and make them our forefront of our life instead of God.
Yeah. So I mean, with the idea of alchemy, see, Ed and Al use alchemy for good. They're trying to use
Mm-hmm.
it to protect their friends, to stop this evil plot. And then on the other side, you see the seven deadly sins, you see the government, you see the father, this kind of master villain.
Yep.
They're using alchemy to create philosopher's stones,
Mm-hmm.
to kill all of these people, to gain power for themselves. So alchemy in the show isn't good or evil.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you use it. And so, like what you're saying, in different things in our lives, how are you using the things God has given you?
Yeah.
What is your thought process and what are your desires? Because out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. We hear that.
And
we hear that from the heart comes everything that defiles a man.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's driving you in your day-to-day life, and is that being driven by godly desires or sinful desires? Because that'll affect on how you use and interact with the world.
And it's so interesting to see is, and my grandpa always told me this is, and it's kind of right, is every man and woman's words are like their heart on their sleeves, and it's what he was trying to get at is anything that we say or do, our actions, is going to reflect how we feel and our thoughts and where our heart's at. So if I'm bogged down about work and my focus is on all the stress in my life, then I'm probably going to snap at people and be angry at the world. And we see a lot of bitter and angry people today that are focusing on the problems in their life instead of all the good things that God has given them.
Yeah. But so with that idea, greed, sinful greed, is wrong. But desires, I
that's
think
what
we
we
should
need to-
have desires.
Yeah, that's what we're
You
we're
should
not
pursue things.
Yeah, like what Philip is trying to tell you is not like when the actual character Greed said that, is we're not saying it's okay to be greedy. No,
don't
we're not
be
saying
greedy.
that. But there's a difference between desires, and then there's a difference between running home with those desires and making them your everything.
Right.
And that's greed.
Yeah. What are you desiring, and is it honoring God?
Yeah.
And if so, then
So
desire and wish for that and pursue that with all
godly
your might.
desires is what we're trying to get at. Is
Yeah.
desires is fine as long as they're aligned with God.
And we're running out of time here, but the goal for a lot of the characters in alchemy is that they're doing, when they find philosopher's stones, they can enter this place, this special realm where there's this figure of truth. And truth is defined as a lot of different things. He calls himself God, the world, knowledge, and all of these people are gunning to find this person because it gives them power.
Mm-hmm.
And so even in that, they're seeking for knowledge, for truth, by discovering the perfect alchemy. But even that is a desire for power. And the question is, are you going to use that for good or for evil?
And what really got me is when I watched this, and it kind of disturbed me in a sense, is, especially in the story, they make this character and they say like, oh, this is God, but when the homunculi and Ed and all them entered into the gate and they seen him, he's like, I'm the world, I'm the truth, I'm this, I'm that, and he basically claims himself. It's like, I'm basically everything, or you can call me God. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, if we're trying to correlate that to actual God, I think their perception of God is kind of like pantheism, where they're claiming that everything is God, and in reality, God is an entity upon himself. He's a, like how we say is, the Holy Spirit, like the Trinity, the person. They're separate. They're beings. They're not. God is not this mic. God is not. That's what they're, in the concept they're saying is, like with the concept of the
this truth.
This
figure,
truth and all the truth figure and all that. That was kind of like he claimed to be God. He's basically kind of claiming to be everything. Mm-hmm. And that's what. And if you ever look up pantheism and stuff like that, that's similar to what they're kind of describing in that in the what the truth in that story is.
Yeah, and another thing that is false and rubs against the Christian idea is
Yeah.
as they were seeking truth, Ed and Al were seeking truth
Yeah.
to get their mother back or to
Mhm.
get their bodies back. The father was seeking truth to become this all powerful being that could rule the world, the universe.
So that's
basically.
what that was what really, you know, to Christian values is, you know, the father was literally trying to become God, and you know, Ed and Alphonse was trying to restore themselves.
Yeah,
So
but
that's
you know what they sought out truth and sought out God to get something out of it.
yeah,
But as Christians, we seek God because we desire to worship Him. Because He's
Mhm.
not this all everything is God. God is everything energy.
Yeah.
He's a person that we can love and have a relationship
yeah, and
with.
he's not a genie.
Yeah,
We
he's
can't
not
just
a
go up
genie.
to him and expect everything that we want. You know, obviously God can give us anything that we want, but the thing is we have to when we come, we need to come in this thing of like, Lord, you know better than I do, and you provide, you know, like your will in my life, because you know, any desire that I have may not be what you want me to have.
Right.
Um,
And that circles back to what we're talking
yeah.
about with desires is
Mhm.
are they for God or against Him?
Yeah, and
You
that's
know?
why when we come to God, we need to come in that humble heart. Is let me ask for what you want me to ask to you, Lord. Let me seek what you want me to do, not seeking out His will, not ours.
Yeah. So there's so many other things we could talk about this show, but to end on that, you know, like you said, we should have an attitude towards God of love and
Mhm.
of obedience.
Yep.
Our desires should line up with His desires, and we should see Him as a person who we can have a
Mhm.
relationship with,
Yep.
not this entity in the sky that we come to just get
And that's
something
what,
out of.
and that's kind of like we only got a few moments left, but that's what really I'm gonna kind of get on this rant is I think that perception of that truth that was the example, and that kind of relates to how people in other religions and other things perceive God, where they have to do things to get to,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, that equivalent exchange
yeah,
that they're the ones paying the price
yeah,
for it. And the Christian, it's Jesus, it's God
yeah,
who pays the price for us.
and and that's basically the main concept of how we apply to this to our life. So
Yeah. So, all right, we're out of time. We could easily talk about this for another hour.
yes,
So, I highly encourage you to watch
at
the
least
show,
yeah,
look at it. It's really amazing. But this has been Animated Adonai.
Yep.
Again, I'm Philip Moonpie Man
and
Fulmer.
Red, Nathan Young, and come back again for our next episode. And thank you for just listening and the application to our Christian life. So
Yeah. So we hope it's helpful. We'll see you again. Hopefully next time we might pull back, not go too deep into it, but
yeah.
stay tuned and hopefully we'll have a good time. So all right.